Have you ever felt like your conversational French just hits a brick wall the second you step into a professional setting? Well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to unlock some of the specific, high-impact vocabulary that will take your French from just casual chatting to absolutely career-defining.
So, let me ask you straight up. Do you speak professional French? You know, there's a world of difference between ordering a coffee and, say, debating a legal contract or analyzing a company's finances. That gap, that's where your professional credibility is built. And we're going to start bridging it right now.
Okay, let's dive into our first area, the world of French law. Now, in this field, getting the words right isn't just a nice-to-have, it's everything. Every single word carries some serious legal weight.
So our first term is la jurisprudence. This isn't just about the law written down in some dusty old book. What it really means is the whole body of past court decisions and how they've interpreted that law over time. Think of it as the collective wisdom of the courts, and it's what shapes how all future cases are going to be decided.
And what's so cool about this is how it works in the real world. When a lawyer in France talks about jurisprudence constante, it's like they're saying, look, the record shows that courts have ruled this way again and again in the past, so you should probably do the same. It becomes the absolute bedrock of their entire argument.
Next up, la mise en demeure. This one sounds really formal because, well, it absolutely is. This is the official warning shot across the bow. It's a legally recognized letter that basically says, you need to fulfill your obligation, pay up, fix the problem, or we're going to court. It signals that the time for friendly chats is officially over. And this example makes it crystal clear, right? Getting a mise en demeure for unpaid rent isn't just a simple reminder from your landlord. Nope, it's a formal, legal document that starts the clock ticking on a potential lawsuit. Knowing this term helps you understand the gravity of a situation instantly.
All right, let's switch gears completely. We're leaving the courtroom behind and heading straight for the boardroom. In the fast-paced world of French business, the language shifts from talking about rights and obligations to performance, growth, and the bottom line.
First up in the business world is le bilan, which is what we'd call a balance sheet. The best way to think about it is like a financial snapshot of a company. It shows you everything the company owns, its assets, and everything it owes, its liabilities, all frozen at one specific moment in time. It's the ultimate health check.
So whenever you hear someone discussing the bilan, what they're really doing is taking the company's financial pulse. And seeing a strong growth in assets, like in this example, is exactly the kind of healthy sign that investors and managers are looking for.
Okay, this next one is absolutely crucial. Le chiffre d'affaires, often shortened to just CA. This is the big one, the top line number. It's all the money that comes in from sales before you start subtracting any costs or expenses. It's pretty much the #1 way to measure a company's size.
And I guarantee this is one of the most common metrics you'll ever come across in a French business report or a news article. It's a headline number. That chiffre d'affaires tells you at a glance the sheer scale of a company's operations.
Okay, for our last stop today, we're putting on our lab coats and stepping into the world of science. Here, the French language demands incredible precision to make sure that research can be understood everywhere, with zero room for error.
You know, at the very heart of any scientific discovery, you'll find une hypothèse. It's not just a random guess. It's a smart, structured, and most importantly, testable idea. It's basically the brilliant what-if that kicks off the whole investigation.
And this is the term in its natural habitat. I mean, this is what science is all about, right? Trying to make sense of the world, especially when you get results you just weren't expecting. The hypothesis is the tool that turns a confusing mystery into a focused investigation.
Our next term from the lab is un échantillon, which just means a sample. You see, it's usually impossible for scientists to study an entire population or every drop of a substance. So what do? They take a small, carefully chosen part, the échantillon, to draw bigger conclusions about the whole.
And this example really brings home how important this is. Sometimes it's literally a matter of life and death. In medicine, that single échantillon of blood is what makes a diagnosis possible. The accuracy of the analysis on that one little sample can change absolutely everything for a patient.
So we've been through the courtroom, the boardroom, and the lab. But here's the real secret sauce to professional fluency. It's not just about knowing the words, it's about knowing which meaning of the word to use. When it comes to language, context is king.
I mean, just look at this. This example says it all. Take the simple word action. If you're in a business meeting, an action is a share of stock. You own a piece of the company. But if you walk into a courtroom, an action is a lawsuit. It's the exact same word, but you're talking about two totally different universes. And this right here is why context isn't just important, it's everything.
So, what's the bottom line here? What should you take away from all this? First, specialized vocabulary is your ticket to being taken seriously. The absolute best way to learn it is to see the definition and then see it used in a real-world context, just like we did today. And above all, always be aware of the professional domain you're in, because real fluency isn't just about knowing words, it's about proving you understand the world they belong to.
And there you have it, some powerful new words to help you navigate the professional worlds of French law, business, and science. So the real question I have for you is, what's next? Using this approach, which professional world are you going to explore next? Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.
All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to crack the code of French news. And I'm not just talking about translating words. We're going way deeper, uncovering the hidden meanings, the emotion, and, the persuasion that's packed into pretty much every article you read. So let's dive in.
You know that feeling, right? You're scrolling through the headlines, you get the basic gist of it, but there's this little voice in your head telling you there's a whole other story happening just under the surface, a story you're not quite getting. Sound familiar?
Well, guess what? That feeling is absolutely right. You are missing part of the story. But hey, that all stops today. Right here, right now, we're going to build your own media detective toolkit so you can start seeing what's really being said. Okay, so first up in our toolkit is our first clue, the tone. This is all about the mood behind the words, right? The actual feeling the writer is trying to give you. So what even is tone? Well, it's the author's attitude, it's how they feel about the subject. Are they angry, excited, worried, sarcastic? You don't get this from the facts alone. No, you get it from the very specific words they choose to use. Check this out. It's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. On the left, you've got a super neutral statement. The government announces a reform. Okay, fact. But look at the right. The government imposes a controversial reform. Whoa. See the difference? The word imposes makes it sound aggressive, like you have no choice. And controversial immediately tells you, hey, people are fighting about this. The basic event is the same, but the feeling, the tone, is worlds apart. Awesome. Now that we've got a handle on tone, let's grab our second tool. We're looking for bias, what I like to call the hidden perspective. This is all about figuring out the point of view that's shaping the whole story from the get-go. And here's something you've got to remember. Every single source has a bias. Yep, every one. It's just part of being human. So the goal isn't to find some mythical, perfectly neutral article, because that doesn't exist. The real goal is to get really good at spotting the perspective so you can factor it in. So, how do we actually do that? Well, there's a simple 4-step check you can run. First, who's talking? What publication is this? What's their deal? Second, start hunting for those loaded words we talked about, the ones that pack an emotional punch. Third, and this one is huge, ask yourself what's not there. Who didn't they talk to? What data is missing? And finally, step back and look at the framing. Is this story being presented as a crisis? A huge success? An injustice? That frame changes everything. All right, time for our final clue, the one that ties it all together. We're moving beyond feelings and perspectives to look at the actual structure of the article. We're talking about the argument. Think of it like finding the skeleton that holds the whole thing up. You see, any article that's trying to persuade you of something is built around this core structure. There's a main point they want you to believe, there's the evidence they use to back it up, and then there's the conclusion they want you to walk away with. Once you see this framework, you can really start to see if their logic is solid or, full of holes. So how do we break it down? It's simple. You just ask 3 questions. First, the thesis, the claim. What's the number one thing they want me to believe here? Second, the proof, the evidence. What are they using to prove their point? Are they using facts, data, quotes? And is that evidence any good? And finally, the conclusion. Okay, based on all that, what do they want me to do or think now? And just like that, you've done it. You've gone from just reading the news to actually analyzing it. Seriously, with these tools, you now have everything you need to deconstruct pretty much any news story that comes your way. So let's do a quick recap of your new analyst toolkit. You've got tone to nail down the feeling,
You've got bias to uncover the hidden perspective, and you've got argument to map out the logic. Those three things working together, they'll give you the whole picture, not just the surface level story.
So the next time you're reading the news in French, you won't just be seeing the words anymore. You'll be seeing the architecture underneath it all. The emotion, the perspective, the logic. You've got the tools now. You can see the hidden story. The only question is, what are you going to do with them?
Okay, so if you're learning French, listen up. I am about to share the single most important piece of advice that's going to totally transform your speaking from, awkward and clunky to sounding really natural. And we're going to start with a classic mistake.
All right, so picture this, right? You're in Paris. You're about to see the Eiffel Tower for the very first time. And you turn to your new French friend to say, I'm so excited. So your brain does that quick word-for-word thing and you say, Je suis excité. And your friend gets this really weird, uncomfortable look on their face. Why? Well, because you didn't say you were excited. You just announced that you're sexually aroused. Yikes. It's a classic mistake, but it perfectly shows the exact problem we're going to solve today.
So, why does that even happen? I mean, how can a sentence that's technically correct word for word be so incredibly wrong in what it actually means? This right here is the question that trips up so many learners.
Well, it all comes down to what I call the literal translation trap. And trust me, it's a habit we all fall into. It's probably the single biggest barrier between just knowing a bunch of French words and actually speaking French.
I mean, does this sound familiar? You've spent hours and hours memorizing vocabulary lists, you know the grammar rules, but when you actually try to speak, your sentences just feel like English sentences wearing a French disguise. If that's you, you're absolutely not alone. This is pretty much a universal experience for anyone learning the language.
So the big question is, how do we escape this trap? Well, let's get right to the solution. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful shift in how you think. You have to start thinking in ideas, not in individual words.
Seriously, this right here, this is the golden rule. I want you to memorize this, write it down, whatever you need to do. Your goal is not to find the French word for every single English word in your sentence. No, your real goal is to understand the idea you're trying to get across, and then build that idea from the ground up using French tools.
So let's give this a name, right? We'll call it Idea First Translation. What it really means is just taking a step back. Before you even try to say anything, you have to first get a grip on the core feeling, the real intent, the picture in your head that you're trying to share.
Okay, so how does this actually work in the real world? It's basically a three-step mental process. First, you ask yourself, what do I really mean here? Step 2, and this is honestly the hardest part, you have to completely forget the English words you're about to use. Just let them go. And then step 3, you ask, how would a French speaker express this idea? Then you build it from there, the French way. All right, theory is great and all, but let's actually see this thing in action. Because the difference between a literal translation and an idea-first one, it's like night and day.
Okay, let's take the phrase, I'm looking forward to it. The core idea here is that feeling of eager anticipation, right? If you translate it literally, you might get something really clunky like Je regarde en avant pour ça, which just makes zero sense in French. So what's the French way to express this idea? It's j'ai hâte. It literally means I have haste. The words are completely different, but the feeling, the idea, it's exactly the same.
Oh, here's another one you hear all the time. It makes sense. So many English speakers will say, ça fait du sens, which is a perfect, direct copy of the English structure. A French speaker would never, ever say that. The idea is just that something is logical, and so they say, c'est logique. That's it. Simple, direct, and 100% French. Now this next one, shows a really deep difference in how the two languages are structured. Think about I miss you. In English, it's simple. I am the subject, I am doing the missing. But in French, the whole thing is flipped on its head. They say tu me manques, which literally translates to you are missing to me. See the difference? It shows how the whole concept can change. You are the subject. You're the one causing this feeling of absence inside me. It's a totally different way of looking at it.
And okay, one last classic example, asking someone's age. An English speaker's brain goes straight to, how old are you? And you might try to say something like, comment vieux es-tu? But that's not the French idea at all. They don't think about how old you are. They think about what age you have.
So the natural, correct way to ask is quel âge as-tu? It's a completely different frame for the exact same question.
Okay, so how can you start using this like right now? Let's turn this whole concept into a super simple tool you can use every single time you speak. Think of it as your new 3-step mental checklist.
From now on, before you speak, just take a second, pause, and run through these 3 questions in your head. Number 1, what am I really trying to say? What's the core idea? 2, how would a French person express this exact idea? And 3, this is the big one, am I actually building a French sentence, or am I just building an English one with French words slapped on top? Seriously, this little check will save you from the je suis excité mistake, and probably 1,000 others.
You know, making this shift from translating words to translating ideas, it really is the key to unlocking fluency. It's the thing that will make you sound not just correct, but truly natural. So I'm going to leave you with this question to get you started on that path. What is one common English phrase that you always use that you're now going to stop and rethink before you try to say it in French?
Hey, welcome back. So look, if you're here, I'm going to bet your French is already pretty darn good. You can hold your own in a conversation, you get the subtleties, you feel confident. But what if we could take it to that next level? We're talking about that final polish, you know, that little something that separates the merely fluent from the absolutely flawless. That's what we're going to do today. So here's a little challenge for you. You think your French is pretty much perfect. Well, let's see. This whole thing is basically designed to poke at those deep, subtle bits of knowledge, the kind of stuff that usually only clicks after years and years of living there. Let's see if we can find 1 or 2 of those tiny, almost invisible cracks to patch up. You game? All right, let's get right into it. We're going to look at 3 specific types of mistakes. And these aren't beginner mistakes, not at all. These are the super subtle, super common errors that even really advanced speakers make. You know, the kind of slip-up that won't totally derail a conversation, but man, if you fix it, your French is going to sound so much more authentic. Okay, first up, deceptive preposition pairs. We're talking people versus places. This is a classic trap that I see all the time, even with super advanced learners. Okay, take a look at the sentence. J'ai visité mes parents ce week-end. Now, on the surface, this looks totally fine, right? It's a direct translation of I visited my parents this weekend. Makes perfect sense. But there is a sneaky little error hiding in there. Do you see it?
So what's wrong with it? Seriously, take a second and think. The verb visitor, it feels so right. But nope, it's actually meant for something totally different. And getting this right, this is exactly that final 5% we're talking about. And boom, here's the fix. When you're talking about visiting people, the phrase you need is rendre visite à. So the sentence should be j'ai rendu visite à mes parents. See that? It's a whole phrase, not just one verb. And nailing that little detail, it just instantly makes your French sound so much better. So here's the rule, and it's actually pretty simple once you get it. Visitor is for places. You visit the Louvre, you visit Paris, you visit a museum. But for people, you rendre visite à your friends, your family, your grandma. Just burn that person versus place distinction into your brain, and I promise you'll never get it wrong again. All right, next section. Let's talk about the subjunctive. Oh yeah, the subjunctive, the final boss for so many French learners, right? It's not just about memorizing all those weird endings. The real trick is knowing when to pull it out. And the secret, as we're about to see, all comes down to one thing: certainty. Okay, check out this sentence. Je ne pense pas qu'il est en retard. Again, sounds pretty reasonable. I don't think that he is late. The verb here, est, is just the regular old indicative. But that first part of the sentence, je ne pense pas que, that's a huge clue that something else needs to happen. So here's how it works. When you say something like, je pense que, I think that, you're basically stating a belief. You're pretty sure about it. That's why you just use the normal indicative, il est. But the second you make it negative, je ne pense pas que, well, now you've introduced doubt. And doubt, my friends, is the magic key that unlocks the subjunctive. So it becomes il soit. So just remember this simple trigger. If you're certain, if you believe it, stick with the indicative. But if there's any doubt, any uncertainty, especially with negation, you've got to switch to the subjunctive. The right way to say it is, je ne pense pas qu'il soit en retard. It's a tiny change in the verb, but wow, it shows you really know your stuff. All right, let's move on to our third and final trap, the infamous faux amis or false friends.
These are the sneakiest words in the language because they look exactly like English words, but they mean something completely different. And let me tell you, these can lead to some of the most dangerous and honestly, most embarrassing mistakes you can make.
And here we have it. Maybe the #1 most famous faux ami of all time. You're super pumped about a concert, so you say, Je suis très excité pour le concert. I mean, it seems like a perfect translation of, I'm very excited for the concert, right? Wrong. So wrong. So, what is the big deal? What are you actually saying when you use the word excité to describe yourself? I'll give you a hint. It has absolutely nothing to do with being enthusiastic or looking forward to something. And there it is, the word excité. Its most common meaning when you're talking about how a person feels is sexually aroused. Yep. So, as you can imagine, this is a pretty high-stakes mistake. It's one you're going to want to scrub from your French vocabulary like yesterday. So, how do you actually say you're excited about something? Well, you've got a couple of great, totally natural options. You can say, J'ai hâte de voir le concert, which basically means I can't wait to see the concert. Or you could say, Je suis impatient de voir le concert. Both work perfectly, and more importantly, they'll save you from a very awkward moment. And just to drive the point home, here's another quick one. The word actuellement. It does not mean actually. It means currently or right now. If you want to say actually, the phrase you're looking for is en fait. See? Just another one of those little details that makes a world of difference. So that's a wrap on our 3 big ones. And again, none of these are rookie mistakes. Think of them more like fine-tuning. These are the little tweaks that take you from just speaking French really well to speaking it with, real precision and elegance. It's all about putting that final shine on a foundation that's already solid. So let's do a super quick recap, kind of like your checklist for reaching that next level of mastery. Number 1, people versus places. It's rendre visite à for people, visiter for places. Got it? Number 2, certainty is your guide. If you're certain, indicative. If you're doubtful, subjunctive. And number 3, always be suspicious of words that look a little too much like English. Double check those false friends. Okay, so as we finish up, I want to leave you with a question. Out of these 3, which one are you going to focus on eliminating this week? Just pick one. I'm serious. Committing to fixing just one of these will make a noticeable difference in your French, like right away. Thanks so much for diving in with me, and never stop polishing that incredible skill you've built.
All right, so if you're watching this, I'm going to guess you're an advanced French speaker, and you've hit that final, super frustrating wall, right? You're fluent, but you're not flawless. Well, today we're going to talk about how to shatter that C2 ceiling. And spoiler alert, it's not about more grammar drills. It's about a total mindset shift. So let's just dive right in with the big question. Why does this final level feel so impossible?
So yeah, let's talk about that feeling, because it's real. Why does C2 feel so out of reach? I mean, you can have a really complex conversation, you can totally understand the news, but you still feel like you're missing something, right? That last, 5%? You know what I mean. You don't always catch the subtle jokes or the cultural references or just that effortless flow of a native speaker. It kind of feels like you're on the outside looking in. Yep, you've hit the C1 plateau. And trust me, you are absolutely not alone in this.
Okay, so to get past this thing, we've got to understand what we're actually up against. What is the real difference between being, functionally fluent and having true mastery? It's smaller than you think, but it's also way more profound.
Take a look at the shift in language here. On the C1 side, it's all about function, right? Understanding, expressing, handling situations. But C2? Look at those words: culture, subtext, nuance, effortlessness. The leap from C1 to C2 isn't really about cramming thousands of new words into your brain. It's a fundamental shift. You go from using the language like a tool to, living inside it. It's like the difference between knowing a recipe and actually being a chef.
So how do we make that leap? Well, I can tell you the answer isn't in another textbook. It's a complete change in your whole approach. It's about building what we call the immersion mindset. And the goal is actually pretty simple. You're going to build your own little France, right where you are.
And let's be super clear on what full immersion actually means. This is not about, watching a French movie on a Saturday night. It's a complete lifestyle shift. The idea is to stop having a separate French time in your calendar. Instead, you're going to weave the language into the very fabric of your everyday life.
This right here, this is the goal. We want to make French the default soundtrack to your life. The point is to get where hearing, reading, and even thinking in French isn't a conscious choice anymore. It's just your default setting. The music you listen to, the news you check in the morning, the GPS directions you follow, it all just becomes part of your own French world.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. That sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like day to day? Like, how do you do this when you have a job, a family, a life? Right, so let's get super practical. We're going to map out a blueprint you can literally start using tomorrow.
So we'll break the day into 3 simple, totally manageable parts: the morning kickstart, the midday integration, and the evening wind down. Let's do it. First up, the morning. That first hour of your day really sets the tone for everything else. So our goal here is simple. Make sure the very first language you interact with is French, not your native tongue. This one thing immediately flips a switch in your brain and gets you into the right mode.
And you can start with 3 really simple swaps. Okay, first, switch your phone language to French. I'm telling you, this is an immediate game changer. All of a sudden, just checking the weather exposes you to practical vocabulary. Next, instead of your usual English news podcast, swap it for something like France Info. And while your coffee's brewing, just scan the headlines on Le Monde. See, these aren't extra tasks. They're just simple swaps.
All right, let's talk about midday. You know, that part of the day where life gets crazy and all our good intentions just go out the window. The secret here is not about finding more time. It's about repurposing the time you already have. We're going to turn all that dead time into live practice.
Just think about all those little moments in between things. Your commute to work, that is a perfect, uninterrupted block of time for a French audiobook or a playlist from an artist like, say, Stromae or Angèle. Got 5 minutes on your lunch break? Scroll through some French language accounts on social media. Oh, and here's one of my favorites. Change your GPS voice to French. Seriously, you will learn commands and directions without even trying.
Okay, and now for the evening. Let's be real. You're tired. The absolute last thing you want to do is feel like you're studying. And you know what? That's perfect. The whole goal for the evening is to make French a part of your relaxation, something you enjoy, not another chore. This is all about effortless, natural absorption.
So, look, if you're going to watch some Netflix anyway, why not make it a French series? Something like Call My Agent or Lupin. But here is the absolute key. Turn on the French subtitles, not the English ones. This is so important for connecting what you hear with what you see. Cooking dinner? Pull up a recipe video from a French YouTuber. And before bed, instead of mindlessly scrolling on your phone, just read one chapter of a French novel. Remember, it's about pleasure, not pressure.
So you've flooded your life with all this French input. You're listening, you're reading. It's awesome. But there is one final, absolutely crucial step. Because hearing and reading, that's only half the battle. To really, truly achieve mastery, we have to flip the switch. We have to go from passively consuming the language to actively producing it.
Most people stuck at the C1 level live right here, in this massive world of passive input. You listen all day, you read, you understand a ton, but to break through that plateau, you have to intentionally, consciously increase your active output. That's the speaking and the writing. This is what forges the connections in your brain. It's what takes you from just knowing a word to truly owning it.
And look, this does not have to be scary or overwhelming. You can start so small. Just narrate your daily actions to yourself in your head. Bon, maintenant je vais me faire un café. Find a language exchange partner online for just one 30-minute chat a week. That's it. Or start a journal where you write one sentence a day in French. Or just leave a simple comment on a French YouTube video you watched. Every single tiny act of creating language builds that muscle of active fluency.
So after you do all this rewiring of your daily life, what's the real payoff? What's the prize at the end? What does it actually feel like to be on the other side of that C2 wall? Let's talk about the promise of what's waiting for you.
At the end of the day, C2 mastery is that moment when you finally stop translating in your head. It's when you can hear a sarcastic joke and get it, not just because you know the words, but because you feel the tone. You get the cultural context. The language stops being this foreign thing you're studying, and it actually becomes a part of you. It's a really deep, really satisfying connection.
Look, the path from C1 to C2 isn't one giant, impossible leap. It's really just a series of small, consistent, intentional choices that, over time, completely change the soundtrack of your life. And that process, it can start right now. So my question for you is simple. What's your first step going to be? Don't even think about the whole blueprint. Just pick one thing we talked about today, one tiny change. Are you going to switch your phone's language right now after this is over? Are you going to find a French playlist for your drive tomorrow? Your immersion begins with that single first step. So, what's yours going to be?
So, you're thinking about taking on the DALF C1 or C2 exam. That's a huge step. And, it's okay to admit it can feel a little intimidating. But I want you to think about it differently. This isn't just a test. It's your chance to really showcase your high-level French skills. And with the right strategy, it's not just something you can pass. It's a challenge you can absolutely conquer. So let's break down the game plan. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to walk through every single section of the exam piece by piece. We'll start with listening, move to reading, then writing, and finally speaking. And we'll wrap it all up with a killer checklist that'll have you walking into that exam room feeling confident and ready to go. All right, let's dive right into the first major hurdle. Section 2, Mastering Listening Comprehension, or as it's called, the Compréhension de l'oral. This is really your first big chance to prove you can follow fast, complex, real-world French, just like you were born to it. So what does this actually look like on exam day? Well, you've got about 40 minutes. In that time, you'll hear two kinds of audio. First, a longer piece, maybe an interview or part of a conference. The good news? You get to hear that one twice. But then you'll get a series of short clips, think news flashes, ads, that kind of thing, and you only get to hear those once. Your job is to catch it all, the big ideas, the tiny details, and even the speaker's attitude or tone. Okay, so how do you even begin to tackle this? It really boils down to a smart 4-step strategy. First, use that preview time you get to read the questions before you listen. This is a game changer. It means you're not just listening blindly, you're actively hunting for specific answers. On that first listen of the long track, just focus on the big picture. What's the general topic? Who's talking? Then, on the second listen, you go in with a magnifying glass, grabbing all those details. Finally, write your answers down, keeping them short, sweet, and to the point. And this brings me to a golden rule from the examiners themselves. Precision is everything. You have to answer the exact question being asked, not what you think you heard or what you want to talk about. If the question asks why something happened, you better explain the reason, not just describe the event. It's a subtle difference, but it's crucial. Okay, moving on to section 3, decoding reading comprehension, the compréhension des écrits. Now the challenge shifts. You're no longer just listening. You're trying to decode really dense, high-level texts, and all while that clock is ticking away. So here's the setup. You've got 50 minutes, one long, complex text. We're talking somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 words, so it's hefty. And then a whole set of questions. But these aren't simple what happened next questions. No, they're designed to make you dig deep into the author's arguments, the way the text is built, and all the little nuances in the language. And here is probably the most important pro tip for this section. Time management is everything. Let me be clear. You are going to come across words you don't know. It's guaranteed. The secret is not to panic and not to get stuck. Use the words and sentences around it to make an educated guess about the meaning, and then you just have to move on. Keeping your momentum is the key to finishing this section on time. All right, let's switch gears and move on to section 4, crafting your written production, the production écrite. This is where you get to stop analyzing other people's work and start creating your own. It's your turn to show off your command of French by building arguments and synthesizing ideas. Now, the first task here is often the one that trips people up the most, the synthesis. This is not your average summary. You'll be given a few different documents, and your job is to find the common ideas and themes between them and present them in a totally objective report. And here's the number 1 rule, the one you cannot forget. Your opinion has absolutely no place here. You are a neutral reporter, that's it. You're really wearing 2 completely different hats in this section. For the synthesis, you're that objective journalist I mentioned. But then, for the second part, the essai argumente, you completely flip the switch. This is where your opinion isn't just welcome, it is absolutely required. You need to build your own argument with your own point of view and support it logically. Now, no matter which task you're doing, the process should always be the same. And I cannot say this enough. Please, please do not skip step 1. That first 10 to 15 minutes you spend just planning, that's the most important part of this whole section. Outline your introduction, your main points, your conclusion, get the skeleton down before you write a single complete sentence. It makes all the difference. And here's a little secret from the people who will actually be grading your paper. They are not looking for you to be the next Victor Hugo. They value clarity above everything else. A simple, well-organized argument written in clear, correct French will always get more points than a confusing essay that's just trying way too hard to sound academic. So relax and focus on structure. So, you've listened, you've read, and you've written. Now comes the final challenge, the one that can make even the most confident speakers a little nervous, the oral production. How in the world do you deliver a polished, flawless presentation when the pressure's on? This brings us to section 5, owning the oral production. And I want us to reframe this right now. This is not some scary interrogation. Seriously, think of it as an opportunity. It's your chance to have a really interesting, high-level, intellectual conversation in French. This is your moment to shine. So here's the breakdown of how it all works. You get a full hour to prepare. That's your strategy session. During that hour, you'll read a few short documents and plan out an 8 to 10-minute presentation, which is called an exposé. After you give your presentation, you'll have about a 15-minute discussion, the entretien, with the examiners, where you'll get to defend your ideas and expand on your points. So how do you make every second of that prep hour count? It's simple. First, read through the documents and figure out the central question or problem they're all circling around. Then, just like with the written exam, you create a clear plan. Intro, arguments, conclusion. Find some specific examples from the text to support your ideas. And here's a pro tip. Write out your first sentence and your last sentence word for word. A strong start and a strong finish leave a lasting impression. And when you get to the discussion part, remember what the examiners themselves say. They want to have a real conversation with you. Listen carefully to what they're asking. If you don't understand, it's okay to ask them to clarify. Treat it like a genuine exchange of ideas. They're trying to see how you think on your feet, not to catch you in a trap. Wow, okay, we have covered a ton of ground, from listening all the way through to speaking. So let's bring it all home with our final section, a clear checklist to guide you in your final weeks and days of preparation. So here's what it all comes down to. 1. Know the format of every section inside and out. 2. Practice with real past papers. There is just no substitute for this. 3. I'm going to say it again. Always make an outline before you write or speak. 4. Focus on clear, logical structure, not on fancy, complicated words. 5. Get French media into your life every single day. 6. Practice under timed conditions to get used to the pressure. And finally, 7. Learn those key transition phrases, the connectors logiques, because they are the glue that holds all of your amazing arguments together. Look, you have the complete roadmap now. You know what to expect and how to prepare for it. Passing the DALF, it's about more than just a piece of paper. It's about opening up an entire world of new possibilities for your career, for your education, for your life. So the only question left to ask is, where is your fluency going to take you next?